Look, you're a real nice guy, but I don't want to buy your pest control. Today on the ManSpace. Welcome to the ManSpace podcast. We're your hosts, Doctors Matt Brown and Rob Porter, and clinical therapist Mike Porter. Welcome, Spacemen. Today we're going to get direct to it and talk about being direct.
Is that from a movie, or did
No, that's what Mike just needed to do with his salesman on
something
his porch.
against pest control?
This is it's how come General won't let me answer the door for door salesman.
That's why I'm not
because
allowed
inevitably I think, well, but I need that.
Well, I never think I need it. It's like I feel guilty and I don't know how to tell them, like, hey, thanks, man, but I'm not interested.
This is how you do it. I was a door-to-door salesman for security systems. Yeah.
Oh.
The most deflating thing I have ever experienced selling door-to-door. I pulled into this neighborhood, and the second I got out, it was like a super nice day. Second I got out of the car, this guy's out working in his yard. He stands up and looks at me and he's like, "Oh, great." Walks inside. I was like, I don't want to knock a single door.
I should do that next time. Just open the door, like, oh, man.
We had this one guy that was he was talking to us, and we were kind of joking back and forth. Then he kind of made some comment about how he had a gun and how he wants to use it on door-to-door salesmen. You're like, yeah. And he's like, "No, I mean it. Get out of here." And we were like, "Oh yeah." And he's like, "No, get the F out of here." Just totally shifted on us. We're like, "Okay, sorry."
I don't like I've found my ways around this because I've had some situations. I remember once walking out of Sam's Club, some guy convinced me. He's like, "Hey man, can we just come to your house?" And he's like, we'll do an assessment for you to look at your bathroom and this and this. And it's like, okay. Because I just wanted to leave. And so I left, and I was like, oh my gosh. So I had to call up and be like, "Hey, I'm going to cancel that appointment." I'm like, "Would you want us to come?" "No, I don't want you to come at all. I didn't want you to come to begin with." My wife is just she'll open the door and be like, "No, thanks. No, I don't want that." And now actually we don't even, because we have a little sign. It doesn't say no soliciting. It just says we don't open the door for salespeople, but good luck. And feel free to leave us a pamphlet if you want to. And so now I've done things where I can see him standing in my window, that they're standing at the door, and I just look at them and then just keep doing what I'm doing, which I feel bad about. I have friends who have companies where that's, they go door to door selling.
That's how they make their money.
Sorry.
Worst.
But it does tie into our topic, because not only does it have to do with just being direct and telling somebody, "Hey, I appreciate what you're doing, but I'm not interested." And having to probably say that 3 times, but also before you guys got on Spacemen, Mike had 2 salesmen come to his door, and you got out pretty quick. Minus that,
but I sure didn't feel quick. You need to buy something that you already have.
So they started by asking me about internet, and I love my internet. They're like, "Do you have Google Fiber?" I was like, "Yeah, I do." And they're like, "Do you like it?" I'm like, "I love it. It's the best." And they're like, "Well, do you get your phones through there?" And normally, when I've dealt with AT&T, because they were AT&T, which I'd been thinking faster, I actually hate AT&T's customer service. And I could have just stopped the whole thing that said, "Sorry, I had a bad experience with AT&T and I won't do business with them anymore." And then they would have just been like,
well, we could make that.
They would have, but I would have just kept coming back to it and been like, "There's nothing you're going to say that's going to get me to re-sign up with AT&T," which, I told the guy, I'm like, "You can come back Tuesday next week. We'll see if he comes. We'll see if I'm actually here when he comes." But anyway, so normally when I've dealt with people in the past, they're like, "Well, let me tell me about your plans." And I'm like, my plan with T-Mobile is so inexpensive. They don't offer it anymore. But I'm grandfathered in. They'll never change my price. And I'm like,
no.
I get 5 phones. I'm only paying for one of them.
So unless you want to do that for me,
I was gonna say I shouldn't have mentioned. Well, that's the funny thing is he's like, "Look, man," he's like, that's what he was showing me. He's like, "I can get you And he's like, I can get you 4 new phones free. He's like, you don't have to pay for any of them. And he's like, and we'll buy out any money you owe on your previous phones. And he's like, I can get you 4 new phones. And he goes, and 5 lines for like, it was something like $120 a month. And I was like, I don't see how that's possible, but
yeah, it'd be possible for the first like 6 months, and then they're like, and then it goes
well,
up to
that's
300.
right. Like, so what's that going to become? But then I would lose. Then I would lose MLB TV.
Not worth it. Not
I
worth
know.
losing it.
Except I can't ever watch the Royals.
Yeah.
I know. I
All
can't.
their
And
blackouts.
Yankees are blacked out like half the time.
Well, that's probably for the best for everybody in the world, but
It's not.
Angle your
You
camera
shut
just
your
a
mouth.
little bit to your right or left.
and up. We can all
No, I
see
was
your
just joking
Yankees
because
thing.
you got the Yankees thing behind.
Oh,
Yeah.
there it is.
Jeter.
That's Yankee Stadium right there.
The
in
Yankee
watercolor.
Actually, it's Dodger Stadium.
And that's my Yankees baseball wreath.
Nice.
So he's just showed you the wall of the devil.
I don't know why this just made me think of it. It's going
They
to
just
sound
beat the
like
Mariners.
a weird connection. Maybe it's because I said Jeter in a French accent, but I'm reading Mr. Rogers' biography.
Obviously.
Keep going. So his the original show that he did with this other lady way back in I think the 50s. I don't remember why she said this, but she was wearing perfume, and one of the puppets said she smelled good. And because it was a kid's show, she didn't want to say perfume. So she said, "Oh, thanks, it's my toilet water," which is what it literally means in French,
Right.
you know? And then some mom wrote in some
toilet.
complaint because her kid came out of the bathroom soaked. I put toilet water on myself.
Idiots. That's a time to be direct with your kid and say, you're an idiot. Here's, if I jump into this topic, because
Yeah.
I think my guess is this episode's going to be a short one today.
Well, it is direct and succinct. We're going to succinctify, right? What was that?
Succinctify. Was that what it was?
I like that
There's
word.
some other word we had that was a
Yeah, we did do that. Succinctification.
There you
go. Here's why this came up for me. This has come up for me multiple times. I don't think most of us are very good at direct communication, but it happened to me yesterday. I had a session that I was like, this is going to be like difficult. I had to have a conversation that felt a little bit like I was firing the client, telling them, you guys aren't making progress, and it's not my fault. And so I was like, how do I tell them this? Like, how do I get into, like, I'm not their first therapist. I don't know which one I am, but I'm not their first. And there's a couple specific things that are like, that I could point to and say, I think this is why. But in short, as I'm talking to them and kind of thinking through, okay, how do I say this so that or so they don't respond like this? I suddenly had this moment of like, I don't know. All I can tell them is like, hey, look, here's what I've seen. And I was willing to say, like, I could be wrong about what I've seen, but this is what I've noticed in the patterns that you guys have. And so I just said directly, I don't know what to do with this. What do you guys think we should do with this? It was a moment where I felt like, maybe, I don't remember, because Spacemen, we were talking for 45 minutes before we actually started recording this. And so I don't know what we said before. Have we said anything? Anyway, one of you just talked about this, this idea of like, the thing that was getting in the way of me being direct was I was trying to think through how they're going to process and respond to what I'm saying, rather than just actually thinking, this is what I'm trying to tell you. I don't know anything past that. But I think it also happened too that because I've had some situations recently where It's my job in therapy to like tell people sometimes, hey, that's passive aggressive, and you need to stop doing that. I got pretty mad at some point.
Rob got aggressive and said, "Stop
did.
being passive."
I was just overt aggression. I came right at him, got up in his face. So I mean, to me, I feel like direct communication, it's very hard for me to get it from people. Even when they think they're being direct and they get lost in telling me the story of something rather than just saying, here is what I think or feel, they'll start to justify it first. So by the time we finish, I'm like, how are we talking about your mother now? So that spacemen could think about this in their context. What is it that you feel like gets in the way of direct communication? Or Mike, maybe you'd say something about, you mentioned the idea of direct communication versus, I think you said like conflictual communication.
Confrontational, I think.
Confrontational. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
What's the difference there?
Well, to me,
because for some people they're one and the same.
I know, and that's like, and I mean, by their definition, being confrontational doesn't necessarily imply like an antagonistic approach. But the people that I was the people I was thinking of are, you know, the people that are like, well, like, I'm not afraid to get in anyone's face. And like, to me, that implies a certain amount of aggression or hostility in the approach. And I think you realize you're not going to get the outcome you're looking for. Like, they might back down to you, but they're not going to walk away thinking that you're any kind of a good person, that you're someone that deserves their respect, that you're someone like, they are simply going to be like, I'm going to do whatever I have to get you to shut up and leave. And if that is back down, then I will back down. If that's the fastest way out of this situation, I'll back down. Now, it's possible they'll recognize that they're wrong and back down because they recognize they're wrong. But chances are you're not, there's no understanding. And again, there's probably exceptions to this. None of them readily come to mind, but I like absolutes. I don't buy in. So like, I think, yeah, you're not going to get they're not going to suddenly look at you and think, oh, wow, I was so wrong about that guy. Like, he's very intelligent. He's very well. Nope. None of that is going to happen. They're not going to be impressed with the wit or the eloquence of your argument. Like, it's just not going to happen. They're probably going to think you're a jerk. And sometimes, like, I've said it to, you know, like, I've said it a couple of times to clients, like, at some point you're just being a jerk. Like, I know you think you're being direct, but at some point you're just being a jerk. Like, there's a different way to say that communicates the same thing without degrading or belittling or whatever. And so I think there are some people who misunderstand that they think direct means aggressive, means confrontational, means, and to me, I think I can be direct without being those things. I also think what you've already pointed out, Rob, like, one of the things to me that readily gets in the way is trying to, how can I deliver this so that it causes the least amount of hurt or the least amount of, you know, whatever, so that I have to take the least amount of blame will get in the way of being direct sometimes. And I think, like, I say it to clients frequently, sometimes it's just going to hurt. You can't get around it. Like, I remember one guy, in fact, specifically asked me, he's like, you know, he's struggling with something and it was causing him a lot of emotional pain. And he's like, just how do we get around it? And I just kind of chuckled and I said, dude, you don't get around this. He's like, what do you mean? I said, you just have to get through it. Like you're not going to avoid all this pain that you're hoping to avoid. You're not going to avoid it. It's going to hurt. So just step into it and figure it out. Like you got to do it. So I think, yeah, people trying to avoid that kind of thing or trying to limit the amount of pain or hurt or disappointment the other person feels tends to leave them less willing to take a direct approach. I know for me personally, I don't like telling someone they're wrong. In part because,
what do you know?
well, yeah,
the way
like
I feel.
increasingly I find no, it's not that it's wrong. It's just it's not how I would do it.
Yeah.
And as a result, it's probably not what I find to be the most effective. Because of course I'm going to think my way is the most effective. And if you're not someone I know, like if one of you two came to me and said, "Hey, Mike, like this might be a more effective way for you to approach your business, or this might be a more effective way to approach your work with your clients." Okay, well, I have a great deal of respect for the two of you. You both have more time in this industry than I do. You both run very successful practices. I think, yeah, I'm going to be more open to listening to it. If my neighbor Steve comes up,
Steve,
who sure runs his own business, but not in my field, like we can't market the same way someone else can market.
Steve.
And so I think, yeah, he's going to come up and like, no, I'm not going to think his way. And it doesn't matter if his way would be more effective for me. My first thought is going to be, you don't know my field. What are you talking to me for? And so I think there's a lot of things that get in the way.
Yeah. It's interesting, actually, when you talk about the, we've talked about this before on the show, where it's like there's a difference to me between being blunt and direct. And when you mention somebody's like, I'll just say whatever, it's like it's a blunt. I think you're about to sneeze. It's a blunt approach that actually I think comes from a place where it's like, yeah, I'm afraid of how this will go, so I'll just kind of smack you up front, so that it just goes smoothly for me on the other side. Because you'll be so intimidated or thrown off by the smack that it'll just be like, okay, there. And I get to hide behind, there's no vulnerability, and I get to hide behind the fact it's like, it's just, I'm sorry, it is what it is, because I'm telling you something about you, and you got to hear the hard truth. But to me, that's also comes from a place of like, well, I'm scared of what the outcome would be, so I'll approach it this way instead. I don't know, man. Do you have any other thoughts on why people are indirect before we get into what it means to be direct?
Oui. I am French today.
I just need to powder my nose.
Yeah, I like what you were saying earlier, Mike, because I think that, I think a lot of the indirectness that we communicate is avoiding the conflict or rejection. And like to your point about just going through something, experiencing what's actually there. I think sometimes when we try to think our way through all of that, it trips us up because we're trying to manage all of it still versus, I guess we'll get to this when we talk about the tips, but if I do communicate much more openly and kind of expose the risk, like I'm going to say this without first thinking, is conflict coming? So that I'm already in the conflict and I can kind of deal with it, or I'm going to make this request and then boom, there's the rejection or the denial of the request. And then I'm in it and I have to face that. I think we learn faster when we're on the other side of it instead of trying to manage it before it happens. But I do think those are probably the biggest barriers when we were talking about kind of unwritten rules. I don't know what the equivalent conversation amongst women is like this, but I know for guys, there are certain things that if you were to say like, hey, I'm just going to say this, it's like the whole crowd kind of corrects you with their gasp and response and like, ooh, it's like, that's one of those unwritten rules where you don't communicate that directly, right? Or you don't say anything about that. Instead of like, we don't do that because we're afraid of, blank. But what if we got less afraid of whatever that thing is? Because maybe it's important to say that, right? Maybe it's important to ask that. Maybe it's important to. So I think ultimately, like, vulnerability is like something that causes you to expose yourself to those risks, like conflict or rejection or whatever else you're trying to avoid. But I think even deeper than that, I think the hardest part about indirect communication is you're just saying to yourself over and over and over again, my internal experience doesn't matter as much as yours, or it's not worth fighting for, if that makes sense. Like, it's not worth going through some discomfort to experience more freedom and peace. And when we tell ourselves that over and over and over again, our world gets smaller and smaller. Our communication gets more and more absent or vague or passive, or and then we're like, oftentimes, because we don't have the capacity to deal with whatever the conflict or discomfort would be, we like kind of seek guarantees by predicting, well, I'm not going to say this because you're going to blank, instead of like, I know that's going to happen, it's uncomfortable, and I don't know that I have the capacity to deal with that discomfort, so that's why I don't do it, right? That's a way more agentic way to like look at it, I think, right? It's like you're much more in the driver's seat, where you're saying, that's the problem, I've labeled it correctly. When it's like, I don't do it because you're a bad person, essentially, because you'll do this thing that hurts me, then I have to tiptoe around you, or I have to hide. But I think there's no way, to your point about kind of no way around it. I watched this little mini movie yesterday on well, it's called I don't know. But this lady was documenting a bunch of bike rides, like all around the world. And so she had gone through Australia, like across Australia, through like one of the harshest places on the planet, apparently. And she was like, the days in Australia don't get harder, but you develop the strength to get through them only by going through the days that are harder each time, right? I think we all know that, but I think sometimes it's like, is it worth it? I'm going to pick my battles, and we kind of do this calculation. But I think sometimes we think, like, is it worth it? Is that thing that important to me? And we look at it topically, like, is this issue that important to me to fight over? But if we look at it more at a process level, it's like your relationship to yourself is your ability to take something that you're experiencing that's worth saying and carrying it through all the discomfort and holding on to it. And that's the thing. That's always worth it, right? Because it doesn't mean I'm going to die on this hill, I'm going to fight you over this. It's just, I want to be able to say more directly, more clearly what I actually think and feel. And if I can't do that, if I start to let go of that ability, I'll probably become more and more angry, resentful, cut off from myself, all sorts of things. At the same time, though, I think you can go the opposite direction and, like you said, overthink all of this and just make everything about you. And that's not relationally healthy either. But most people are probably on the side of, I self-filter too much, right? I kind of like think too much about what's going to happen between me and you, what you're going to, all that stuff. Or I have like been so angry or dismissive of it that I'm uncaring now. But yeah, those are my thoughts.
Robert,
yeah, I don't know how you
muted.
Me? I think you are.
I was muted.
Well, Siri answered for you. And Watch was like, I'm fine, thanks.
Matt heard what I said and he liked it. But I was just going to add, and then because I was thinking maybe we could just mention what you think it would, and maybe this is part of the tri-tip, but like this is what good direct communication is, which we've talked about many times. But one of the things I wanted to highlight that we've talked about so many times is something that Mike and Matt are both saying, this idea that like, in different ways, but this idea that like, what matters sometimes is not the hill you're dying on, unless that hill is like, hey, there's something that's going on for me that I feel like it's important to bring it up, and I can bring it up, and it's okay if you disagree with it, but it matters that I bring it up. And so the outcome you look for is like, did I bring my thing up? Did I say my thing? Like when I say I had this in an interaction with some clients recently where I was like, this isn't going to go well, I started thinking, I don't know if it will or won't. I'm just going to say what mine is and trust that the three of us will kind of decide like, hey, what do we do with this information? Maybe we throw some of it out. Maybe we reframe some of it. All I know is I can only come up with, here's what I am thinking and what I saw and observed. And so I was able to stop thinking through how are they going to respond to how I say this. And I just could say, this is what's going on. And as soon as that happens, it becomes a lot more clear, direct, and often succinctified. So tell me, I don't know if maybe this is a tri-tip, but like, what is it that you think this is good direct communication? If someone said, how do I do that? What are you going to tell them?
Here it is.
Oh, check it out. Succinctified.
No, I just want to tackle one aspect of this. And it's requests. So way more often than not, we will passive aggressively comment on something that we wish somebody else would be doing, or we won't ask at all. Or we will complain about something that we're doing, hoping that the other person will jump in, right? Or we'll do a bunch of stuff for somebody and like highlight all of that and hope that they pick up on some hint that they should be helping out with something. Stop all of that and just say, will you do X, please? And wait for the response. And like allow yourself to experience the disappointment or rejection or dismissal that comes, because that teaches you something. Like right now, our pattern is that we don't communicate this way. So maybe that's the first response to me changing the pattern. But I allowed myself to acknowledge that I desire this help, and I'm asking respectfully. In addition to that, like same thing with needs. I need you to X. Can you do that? If it's a no, then okay, then I need to kind of, again, take that information in. And I need to also maybe reflect on like how much do I take that personally when the person says no? Because that's probably why I get more vague and guarded and passive aggressive in the way that I word this. It could mean a number of different things, right? It could mean that they're working through their own process with how we've interacted. It could mean that they have something totally different to do, right? But for this particular need, now that means, okay, then I have to decide if I want to carry it out or not. If I carry it out right now and you can't help me, it means I'm doing it myself. But like just cut to the very specific, positively stated request. I think that's the other piece. We state it in the negative all the time. Just state the positive and like stop talking after that. I think oftentimes what happens is maybe there is a positively stated one and then a whole bunch of complaining about how it doesn't go that way.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's like I need to justify why I just asked you for this, or I need to convince you to be on board with what I just asked you, so I don't have to deal with that.
I don't need your agreement. I don't need any. I'm just asking, can you do this? Yes or no?
Yeah.
And I think over time you get less emotionally charged about those requests. So your emotional tone changes. And that, I think, dramatically increases the likelihood of somebody being able to say, okay, I'm just stepping into this request. I'm not stepping into some emotional entanglement that still exists. I can pick up on all these emotional signals, right? So if you just say, like, I have noticed this with my youngest daughter recently, like just stating it like, hey, will you unload the dishwasher, please? And then walking away. Usually it's like, and every time I've done it, right? It's like, yeah, she comes and does it, right? When it's like, oh, you need to get off your phone. You haven't been doing anything, right? I need the dishwasher unloaded and blah, blah, blah. And you never help and blah, blah, blah. Then it's like, then I could tell myself that story, right?
Yeah.
But when it's just direct and like I give space to respond, a lot of people, I think more people than not, actually have a desire to be helpful and contribute, right, to relationships when given the opportunity to just do that without all the extra stuff.
Except for one of my kids who currently says yeah, and then he just never does it. That sounds like a tip of a tri-tip. Mike, do you got one? What is maybe good direct communication, and what's the tip to do it?
Yeah. To me, like you mentioned before, right? The guy who is just going to be confrontational.
Mm-hmm.
And I had never until, and I can't remember exactly what it was you said, Rob, but until you said it, like it had never occurred to me that approach was designed to cover some of his own insecurities and vulnerabilities.
Mm-hmm.
That it was actually like a method of, no, I'm going to take this approach so that I don't have to acknowledge how I feel about this situation.
Yeah.
Because I'm just going to push it onto you and make it your responsibility. You failed to do something. You failed to respond or act or make a decision in a way that benefited. And so now this is your fault. I don't have to acknowledge my own shortcomings and whatever with it. And so to me, I think good communication is recognizing and owning your own vulnerabilities surrounding whatever the thing is. It doesn't mean you necessarily have to share them, right? Like, no, there are still things about myself that I'm sorry neighbor Steve doesn't get to know. Like, it's none of his business. He just doesn't get it. He's not going to. But I have to understand that that's a thing for me, right? We talk about, I don't know if I don't remember where I got it, so I don't know how. I think I got it from AFI. Let's take it with a grain of salt. We talked about the vulnerability cycle, right? Is this a thing that was like discussed in your guys'
Keep
studies?
going.
No. So it's just the idea that like
that way.
when someone comes and addresses me, if they like step on an insecurity or they kind of tap into one of my vulnerabilities, then instead of hearing to understand, I'm going to shift into a defensive place. Pardon me. And my response will be defensive, which will inevitably tap into one of their insecurities or vulnerabilities. And suddenly we're going this cycle where we just kind of are defend, attack over and over again. By the time we are like aware of what's going on, we're so far away from the original topic that like the number of times I've said to clients, like, are you guys even arguing about the thing you need to be arguing about right now? Are you arguing about what clothes were being worn when the argument happened? Who the crap cares? Like, right? Like, how did you get this far off of your original topic? And so like vulnerabilities are hard. And again, I don't think you necessarily always have to share them. I don't think you have to tell someone, hey, like this is an area that's really hard for me. And it's hard for me to talk about, or it's hard for me to whatever. No, again, people, especially if you're like a manager or a supervisor of employees, like, no, that may not even be appropriate to mention to them, but you need to understand why you feel anxious about whatever you're about to discuss. What is it in that topic that makes you want to take that makes you worried? Well, how are they going to respond? Because if I'm asking people their favorite movie, I don't care how they respond. Because I know, right? I'm just cold.
I don't give a crap. I just asked to fill the space.
But I think there are areas where, like, if we ask, depending on their response, like their response may say something, at least I might perceive it to say something about who I am, on a principled level, right? Like their response may challenge my principles, and that's going to be hard for me. And so I may choose to take a more blunt approach, trying to protect myself. Again, direct communication is recognizing these are the things that are at play for me. Again, do I need to share all those with whoever I'm talking to? No, but I need to know what they are, because they are going to impact how I communicate, how I hear things. And if I don't understand it, then I'm responding without clarity of mind, I guess. So that to me is good communication. My tri-tip would go along with it. One, it's well, okay, maybe it only kind of goes along with it. You
doesn't matter.
You have to be right. I know. You need to start entertaining the possibility that the people you're talking to just might not agree with you. And you need to become comfortable with that idea. Because if they don't agree with you, it doesn't matter how you explain it. They simply aren't going to buy in. You're not going to find the magic phrase. You're not going to find the dagger of an argument. Like, you're just not finding it. They just disagree. Like, I had a client we used to talk frequently about. Client was agnostic. So we would often talk about God and the existence of God. And one day he just said, he's like, why? Why do you believe in God? And I started my response by saying, nothing I say is going to mean anything to you. And I said, it's significant to me, it won't be to you. And I said, because I can't give you anything concrete. And it was the realization of, it didn't matter how eloquent I was in, all things denote there is a God. Like the trees, the rain, I love how green everything is when it rains. And I think, like, to me, that's like, it's all evidence of God. And I thought, none of that's going to mean anything to you, like, because it's not how you choose to see it. And so it was just like, I had to be comfortable with the idea of, I'm not going to change his mind. It doesn't matter how well I say it. I'm not going to change his mind. And so, sometimes they're just going to disagree with you. Okay. Then I need to understand why I'm communicating it. Because if I'm only doing it to change their mind, does it really need to be said? Now, with the agnostic guy, he asked a question, I answered it. But anyway, that's my tri-tip.
I mean,
that's, I guess, my tip for the try. Whatever, go.
My tip for the try, and because to me, I think good, clear, direct communication, you can only actually speak for what is going on for you. I don't think you can, like, when we say you just did this, it's like people will get in fights and arguments about that all day. And it's not it doesn't get you towards what you want. Because if you say you did this, essentially you're saying, don't do that. I don't like it. I would rather have this because I need this from you, which goes back to Matt's thing of saying, just make a request. Hey, will you please not say that to me? Or will you please this or this? So to me, I think, first of all, is direct communication is stop thinking about what other people are thinking. Like, you don't know. The only thing you can do is to say, hey, I don't understand what you're thinking. What do you think about what I'm saying? So then you can actually go in and say, the most I can tell you is this is going on for me. I don't know what to do with this information sometimes, but I think I'm telling you, hey, that didn't feel very good to me, or this kind of freaks me out, or this is uncomfortable. You don't have to tell them I'm uncomfortable because you're a jerk. That's not effective. It's not really direct either. It's blunt. But to say I'm uncomfortable,
rude.
that's good. That's direct. Hey, I'm uncomfortable. Can we please not do this? It's being direct is actually very simple and short. Most of the time, it doesn't require what I struggle with, which is like, what else can I say for the next 10 minutes? So I would say part of the tip is shorten it up. Just say, hey, this is what's going on for me. Can we talk about this? And that's it. And you just got directed. What?
Sorry, I just have a phrase that I have
Is
started
this
to use.
desynctification? It's a song.
Yeah.
Succinctification.
No, it's just a phrase I've started to use, both to help me remember and as a way to address it if I disagree with somebody's take on something. And the phrase that I've started using is, I experienced that differently than you, or my experience has been different. Because I'm not like, it's opening up a thing where I'm saying, look, I'm not, in what I'm about to say, I'm not going to agree with you. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm simply saying my experience has been different. Here's my experience with it. And it feels more like a conversation opening where I can be direct and say, this is how my experience has been different than yours. Again, I'm not telling you what you experienced is wrong. I'm just telling you, I didn't hear it that way, or I didn't read it that way, or I didn't feel it that way. It felt different for me. So a bonus tip maybe.
Oh, you just made it a quad tip, whereas Mike likes to call it a fork.
A fork.
So then, Spacemen, there you have it. Be direct and clear, and come back next time and catch us on the ManSpace. Get forked.